Hello, and thank you for your interest in this video from SMI Advisor. My name is Justin Volpe, and I'm a peer support coordinator at the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors. And joining me today is my colleague, Ron Wilson.
Hello. Yes, I'm Ron Wilson, a 2010 felony drug court graduate out of Anchorage, Alaska, and currently the treasurer of the National Treatment Court Alumni Association.
Ron and I are going to be talking about peers in different criminal justice settings. We both have experience in the field. So I'll start with asking you a question, Ron. How did you get started working in this setting with other participants in the criminal justice system involved with recovery?
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, it all began when I entered the therapeutic course, the treatment course out of Anchorage, Alaska. In 2008, it was an 18-month-long program. And then after completion of the program, I knew that it was going to be imperative to stay connected to a program that gave me the ability to get my life in order. And so I joined the alumni group in Anchorage, Alaska, and have been working with peers and supporting peers ever since.
Can you explain what an alumni group does a little bit, Ron?
Alumni groups are actually designed for that continued connection for graduates after the program. And then also it helps mentor the current participants as they go through the therapeutic or treatment court programs.
Excellent. I think that's awesome. You were connected to that and you continue to help others go through the same journey that you went through, and kind of walk the walk with them because you experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, that's correct. I think that was the missing piece. For 20 years, I've been in and out of my active addiction. And that component there, just staying connected with a group of like-minded individuals working towards the same goal of sustaining their recovery, has been extremely beneficial for me.
I'm going to have to agree with you in that I went through something similar. I went through a mental health treatment court in Miami, Florida, and was a participant in receiving services, and it turned my life around. I got the help I needed, and upon completion of my sentence or treatment, whatever you want to say, I became an employee for that same program. And I went from having an open felony case to becoming a county employee within 8 months. And I was plugged in on the other side now. Instead of receiving treatment through the criminal justice system, I was getting people out of jail and helping them navigate the system, getting to appointments, getting to court, helping them with housing, clothing, food, everything you can imagine. And it put me in service, and just having that opportunity helped keep my perspective and keep me on the right track as well.
Yeah, I agree. Just having that continued connection. I have a similar type of interaction or experience with that. And that's just that, coming out of the program and having that connection and that continued community has been very beneficial.
Yeah, it makes a difference, especially in the criminal justice system, that somebody that's walks the walk and has been in your shoes is more authentic, at least in my experience, than coming from somebody that doesn't know that experience and telling you what to do and how to go about your treatment or recovery. And that's not a peer's role to tell them what to do, but to say, these are the secrets. This is how we did it. This is how you get ahead, and support that individual with the goals that they want in their life, and how to do that in the criminal justice system. I think one of the biggest things for me was that, a lot of people I worked with wanted to go farther than the criminal justice system, and I would basically just help them navigate to get that off their back. Like once you close this case and you do well, you can go and do whatever you want. And I think that's it's hard for people to be under supervision, especially for a long period of time. But the peer support role for me and working with people in recovery was just supporting them, listening to them, and just showing up and being there, being of service.
I think you brought up a good point, and I think that in the justice system that we went through with treatment courts, it wasn't your traditional justice system. It was an alternative. So they allow individual participants as they're going through the course to do it outside of incarceration, and it's such an intense program that you begin to develop a strong bond with the other participants as you're going through. And I think one of the I didn't get work. I didn't begin working in the field, but I actually own and operate a transitional house. It's an 11-bed housing program that caters to adult males that are going through the program, which gives me the ability to continue to mentor those participants as they go through the courts.
Housing is such a crucial component, and to have housing that is equitable and people that have been through the experience running those housing, I think it's really important. So I'm glad you're doing that. Ron, are you grateful that you went through the criminal justice system to be where you're at now?
I am. I tell you, it saved my life, and that's one thing I always stress is that the therapeutic or the treatment court program, it helps save my life, and now it's the alumni groups and the peer support that helps me to continue to keep my life the way it is right now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that, I wasn't happy going through the system and being a participant. And I know a lot of people would rather choose not to be in that situation. But unfortunately, the way the system works in this country is a lot of people that are struggling with mental health and addiction are ending up in the jails and prisons. And I'm just grateful that cycle stopped for me, and that I hope that there's more people like us and doing this work in the criminal justice system so they don't have to go back and they don't have to live that life again.
Yeah, I think that's real big. I think I had been going in and out of incarceration prior to getting in the treatment courts, and never had the ability to identify my mental health condition. And so, as going through the treatment court, I was identified and diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So I then began to connect the dots and saw that when I began to feel anxious or get that anxiety, I was accustomed to just putting something in me. And so without that diagnosis, I never would have been able to learn how to manage my condition or even recognize that I had that condition until I got into that alternative justice system.
And those were some hard times. I mean, I don't know how was it? Let me rephrase that question. How did it feel to you when you realized something else was going on?
That's a good question. I always thought there was like a stigma attached to somebody saying they have a mental health condition. And so when they finally diagnosed me with that, then I began to understand exactly what was going on with me, why I was doing some of the things I did. I never had heard other peers or other people going through addiction openly and admittedly saying that they had a mental health condition. That's why now I let off with I have a mental health disorder or condition and identified anxiety. And I think it's important that we help others get past thinking that it's that stigma attached to it's real.
Oh, I know it. I've been there. And I don't know how your jail or prison experience was, but I was on floors for people with serious mental illness only. And the guilt and the shame, at least that I felt for so long, like something was wrong with me and other people didn't experience or didn't understand the experiences I was having with emotions and just the way I looked at the world. That whole transition was really difficult, but finding ground and confidence through supportive employment in the system, well, at least that's just my experience, and housing and, working, you're starting to work no matter what it is and put food on the table. And, we share so much, across different types of people with different medical conditions. It's just, there's, just the simple joys of life that when you lose those freedoms and you get them back, you can appreciate. And that's where I started to build, my career and my recovery again was after I got out, and I was just grateful for the little things, and I think there's a conversation that you have to have with yourself and have that confidence in your recovery and have some time of doing well before you can share that. At least that was the experience for me. I had to get myself together first before I talked about it, because when you're in the middle of talking, when you're in the middle of going through it, and it brings up, it's an immediate sore. It's an open wound. So to process that healing and to work whatever steps toward recovery or a better life work for you is crucial.
I agree, Justin. I tell you, it was kind of hard to come to terms with it at first, but then once I was identified with the anxiety disorder or condition, and then started learning different tools of how to manage it, and then start talking about it in some of our peer supported process groups, and finding that other men that were like me were experiencing the same thing, then I got past that preconceived notion that I grew up with having three other brothers. Be strong, don't cry, power it through, suck it up, and just manage through it, and be stronger, And so I grew up with those expectations. But then once I learned that managing through, talking about the condition, and seeing that other individuals were also the lights were coming on. You could see that they could relate to that and was being helpful. That it made it a lot easier to talk about.
Man, you bring up a great point, is that, the stigma of mental health and men, and being able to be vulnerable to talk about things that culture and our identities just told us not to talk about things for so many years. And that, if you do talk about it, you are crazy or vulnerable or not masculine enough to speak about these issues. But in my experience, after going through it, it takes an even stronger individual to go through it, process it, and then speak about it, than to just shut it away, and say that doesn't exist. Men don't cry, whatever,
Exactly. I think, Justin, one of the things is when you're early on and you're dealing with the criminal justice system, and the sentences are minor, and you're spending short, brief stints of time in incarceration, it doesn't really have a real strong impact on the quality of your life or the quality of life on your family. But then as you repeatedly keep having these offenses, particularly due to having medicating the anxiety disorder or medicating the mental health disorder, then only thing that changes are the sentences get longer and the losses get bigger. So at some point, it starts getting your attention. And then once you see that you have found the key to being successful by first allowing yourself to be vulnerable and admitting that you have that condition, and then sharing it with others, then you're starting to feel as if you're winning.
So Ron, do you continue to go through some of these struggles? Like, are you cured now?
Cured? I don't think there's such a thing. No, I'm not cured. I tell you, I'm 13 years in recovery right now, and I still have those days where I want to check out. I still have those days where I just don't want to participate. If because of my anxiety, and I feel overwhelmed, particularly because I'm really a busy person, and so I can get myself into doing too much, being overcommitted, over obligated, and then that will bring on that angst. And so I still have to use those tools. But I'm so thankful now that I have those tools, and also have the wherewithal that it's okay. It's okay not to feel okay. So it's easy to pick that phone up and share what I'm going through. And a lot of times just speaking up on what's going on in my mind helps take that pressure away, and it makes everything a lot easier to deal with.
Absolutely. And it's a continuous process, right? The process isn't a one size fits all, and it's, for a lot of people, lifelong. And there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever can get you going throughout your day and live a meaningful life, that's what's important, and meeting people where they're at. Ron, let me ask you a question. Do you think that some of the trauma you experienced as a kid related to you being involved in the criminal justice system?
That's a good question, Justin. And this isn't really an easy topic, and I haven't really shared this with a lot of people. But I grew up with three brothers. I had one younger, two older, And so I come from a traditional family, mother and father at home, and my siblings. But when my mother and father left the house, we as boys, it was a lot of fighting going on. And where I stood on that structure, if you will, I took the brunt of it. And so as I got into treatment courts much later in my adult life, and found out that that fighting and those beatings was traumatic. It was PTSD, and I had no idea. And so I think that what that did was it really caused me to be a pretty angry young adult. And so I started picking up a lot of assaults, and I had no idea. I didn't also know that some of that anger was a secondary emotion of being hurt back in my younger years. So that anger and how I reacted with that anger was in a negative fashion. It caused me several incarcerations.
What would you tell yourself? What would you tell yourself and somebody just starting out in the criminal justice system? Let's say, what would you tell yourself in the situation you told me, or somebody starting out in the field that's recently released from the criminal justice system? What advice would you give them?
I'd say to an individual that's dealing with a SUD, a substance use disorder, like myself, figure out why it is that you continue to use drugs and drink alcohol when it's continually causing you to experience that interaction or that involvement with the criminal justice system. If using drugs and alcohol is causing you to continue to go to jail and cycle in and out of jail, try and figure out why it is that you're using. I was medicating. And so I think there's a large percentage of people that are doing the same thing. And a lot of it's attributed to some of those childhood traumas.
So you feel like you were self-medicating with drugs and alcohol to deal with some of this PTSD, trauma, or anxiety you mentioned, and you found other ways?
That's correct. Yeah. And thankfully, with the help of a therapist, and it brings up another point. I always thought I'd be weak, or I'd be crazy if I had to go see a therapist. Now, when things get out of balance, that's like the first thing I turn to, is because I want a clinical explanation or a clinical opinion on why I'm feeling like I'm feeling. And then a lot of times that's one of the first steps of making the situation and me not feeling okay, make it okay.
That's awesome, Ron. That's awesome. Well, listen, it's really been a pleasure having you today. I want to thank you so much for talking to me about peers in the criminal justice system and some of your experiences in the justice system and trauma. We've covered so much, and I really appreciate it. And for anyone watching this video, I hope this helps you find support for yourself as a peer specialist, or understand how we can best support peers in their important work. If you need more resources around peer support, please visit smiadvisor.org. You can find free education, hundreds of free resources, and a consultation service that lets you submit questions and get answers from national experts. Thank you, Ron. Have a great day.
Thank you.